Thanks everybody for joining us for the Healthy Hustle today. Today we have a guest associate who is Stuart Martin, a doctor of chiropractic who's been with New Earth for many years, and I've known him for many years as well. And so today we want to talk about New Earth products, which are really primarily ancient whole superfoods and the benefits that these foods can have on your nervous system. And so Stuart, if you'd like to talk to us about your sense of what this is all about, we'd love to hear it.
Great. And I think, Justin, I really want to start. First of all, thanks for having me on. I love any way I can contribute to building the awareness of what our foods can provide in people's lives. I always want to participate because it's not only a legacy thing. We want to leave the planet better, but it's also I'm also see it that I'm being very pragmatic. That if I help create a bigger pool of interest and customers, it's going to help me too. As in the old saying, a rising tide lifts all boats, and so that's my attitude. Coming back to the topic at hand today, our nerve system has an enormous need for oxygen, enormous need. And in fact, the energy that is generated in our nerve system through the process of cellular respiration generates enough energy to power a 20-watt light bulb. So that old cliche that you often see in the cartoons of someone walking around with a light bulb above their head, there's accuracy to that. We literally produce enough juice, electricity to power a 20-watt light bulb. And that's all happening through cellular respiration and the electrical process that is our nerve system. So, and this usually stumps my patients and practice members. I described vitamin O, or oxygen, as the second biological imperative. So what, pray tell, could be more imperative than oxygen? And it points to that my premise that our nerve system is, in fact, the only system in the body is accurate. You cannot live for even 4 seconds without the flow of information, or what I call vitamin I, the impulses that go up and down your nerve system to the tune of trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of nerve impulses every hour up and down your nerve system. That is the first biological imperative. The flow of information up and down your spine from we would say from above. We don't know where our life comes from. That's a mystery. We just know that it comes into our nerve system, comes down to the body, and flows out to the tissues and cells of the body. And then the tissues and cells of the body send information back to the central nerve system that goes back to the brain. And it's through that give and take between the brain and the body that we're able to maintain homeostasis, is the term we often hear biologically. Mm-hmm. So right there you have it. The first imperative, once again, not more important than anything else, it's just the most vital, the most imperative, is our flow of intelligence up and down our nerve system. And in fact, before we get into what that might mean with regard to our products and the function of that nerve system, let's look a little bit more succinctly at how that process works. And this is a way that I will often talk to, in fact, I always talk to my new patients. And if there happens to be other patients around who are not new, they get to hear this all over again. So, Justin and everybody listening, I want to tell you what we do and how we go about it. Okay. So my hand right here is your brain. Okay. And we're going to make my arm your spinal column. For you to be as healthy as possible, this pathway must be kept clear as early as the birth process. Childhood slips and falls, or what I like to call in adulthood, the 3 T's of traumas, stressful thoughts, and toxins. We can develop what we call in the world of chiropractic interference in the nerve system, or subluxation. That's the $50 word us chiropractors throw around. And that means simply interference in the nerve system, and interference to the flow of intelligence. And if you have that interference, instead of a fast, complete flow of information up and down your nerve system, it's fast and it's staticky. It's fast and it's staticky. It's like the brain and the body aren't as well connected. So let's look at what this might all mean with regard to our New Earth products. Let's just look at one category right now, the area of protein. We know that even though it's a micronutrient source of protein, you'll get much more protein from maybe a chicken breast or a rice and bean burrito than from the amount of algae you ate that day. But the great thing about the algae from a macronutrient and micronutrient perspective is that the algae is nearly identical in amino acid composition to that of human breast milk. And our brain, which is armed with that information, can go, hey, I'm going to have plenty of that every day, because just like every other type of tissue in our body, our nerve tissues need those quality spectrum of amino acids to recreate themselves to the degree that they are capable of. And what we found over the years in the evolving understanding we have of the nerve system is that our nerves do in fact have a capacity to regenerate. Mm-hmm. They regenerate far more slowly than many other tissues. And some injuries to pathways can be insurmountable, perhaps, but nonetheless, they're capable of that. So armed with that knowledge, we know having the algae in our diet. Now, what is the currency of our nerve system? Well, like every other cell, we could say it's the electron transfer process that goes on in the mitochondria and accounts for the largest part of cellular respiration. Mm-hmm. However, in the nerve system, everything, all that energy gets transferred into neurotransmitters. And neurotransmitters, of course, are how the individual neurons, one here, the other slightly connected with a very small gap. It's that gap that a neurotransmitter communicates to the next neuron, the message it wants to communicate. Well, we know with our mind, New Earth mind, we know that we have a product that, because the cell wall of the algae is so rich in stamina building macronutrient source of glycogen, has been interrupted, that the internal ingredients of the algae, short chain amino acid structures, which our body has an enormous capacity to quickly take a short chain amino acid structure and shift it molecularly, and suddenly it's a neurotransmitter. And so our mind product in particular, we know, are the primo tools that our nerve system, once again, perhaps the only bona fide system in our body, needs to get its work done every day. Energize, another one of my favorite products, Energize. as I said earlier, our nerve system requires an enormous amount of oxygen. The oxygen needs of the brain, the carbohydrate needs of the brain for moment-to-moment function are enormous, just absolutely enormous. And the quality of coenzyme Q10 that is provided by our Energize in a bioavailable format, the most active form, the ubiquinol, I believe is the term. Mm-hmm. The fact that it's in a whole food supplement, so that ubiquinol is more easily absorbed into the body in the context of our micronutrient dense superfood blue-green algae, and of course as well the other the mushrooms, organic and in some cases wild, that's in our Energize, helps another food source. So there's just that, and of course emulsified in oil, much more likely our body is going to take that in a food source rather than a capsule that's just full of coenzyme Q10 and that's it. Mm-hmm. So we could say more. I mean,
I think that's great. I mean, we've covered a whole lot of stuff, and I think it's a fantastic story about the relationship that is, and it's really, like you said, the nerve system that ultimately is the driver of all these things. Lots of chemical things, lots of kind of mechanical things that are going on, but none of it runs without the electrical things that are going on. And right. And there's no one really without the other, but our thoughts, our love, our hopes, our dreams are more electrically based than they are mechanically based. So
exactly.
And nourishing these, with everything that's going on inside our bodies, everything that's going on, especially equally as importantly outside of our bodies. We have nutritionals that I believe can make a difference in our lives. And it was, when we were talking last week, I think the important thing to note is, and it was said by a bunch of people on that call, basically two things. One, you've got nothing to lose, and two, you won't know unless you try. And that to me is a great message. But more importantly, I love the message and the way that you package this information together to make it easy to understand what is very, very complex of all of these systems that rely on each other. But ultimately, it comes down to the needs and the imperatives and supporting those things. And it's really just with the thing you can't live a few minutes without, a few days without, that is the vitamin O, the vitamin W, and then the actual the other fuels that we put in our body, and those are macros and those are micronutrients, trace minerals, and in some cases like us, probiotics, things like that really help it all make it all work together. So so thank you so much for taking the time today to share that with us. I think it's I'm always fascinated by what we do, and it's always fascinating to hear different perspectives on why you do it too. So appreciate it. Thanks again for helping us out tonight, and thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll see you next time.